Hi everybody, welcome to A Course in Miracles Applied. Today's topic is I want the peace of God. The topic is actually I do not want the peace of God. This is based on the lesson 185 in the workbook that is called I want the peace of God. So if A Course in Miracles would be lost and no longer available, right? If all the data and all the pages in the world were gone, and only the first 2 paragraphs of lesson 185 would be left over, it would suffice. Those 2 paragraphs are, in my opinion, the most important paragraphs in the course when it comes to our learning process. They set us on the right path. They set us on the fastest and most direct path back home. When I first realized what it meant and what the far-reaching consequences of this realization was or entailed, I knew I needed to question everything that I had learned with the course up until this point. At that time, I think it was 1994 or 1995, I had been studying the course for a couple of years, and I had met the German translator, one of the German translators, Frankita Katani, at one of her workshops in Turkey about the course. Long story short, Frankita adopted me as her younger brother. She called me Brüdersche, and we went on to hold a couple of workshops. She and I together held a couple of workshops in throughout Europe. One evening, we listened to one of Ken Wapnick's tapes, and that tape was called I Want the Peace of God. I'm putting a link to the Foundation for A Course in Miracles, the bookstore, into the description on YouTube. It's only a 2-tape workshop, but it's really, really fantastic. It boils everything down to this one thing in the course. So while Frankita and I listened to the tape, something clicked for both of us at the same time. We looked at each other, and Frankita told me, we talked about it, and Frankita told me that she now had to go back and look over the whole translation that they did of the course, 5 years worth, because of what she had, what we kind of realized at that very moment. It was as if we were in an elevator that went to the 80th floor of a high-rise, and we suddenly discovered a button that went another 100 floors up. Looking back at this moment, I'm really glad that I found this button or this switch or this insight in the course. I think it saved me a lot of detours with the course. Here's the paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 of lesson 185. The lesson says, I want the peace of God. To say these words is nothing. To mean these words is everything. If you could but mean them for just an instant, there would be no further sorrow possible for you in any form, in any place or time. Heaven would be completely given back to full awareness, memory of God entirely restored, the resurrection of all creation fully recognized. No one can mean these words and not be healed. He cannot play with dreams, nor think he is himself a dream. He cannot make a hell and think it real. He wants the peace of God, and it is given him. For that is all he wants, and that is all he will receive. Many have said these words, but few indeed have meant them. You have but to look upon the world you see around you to be sure how very few they are. It goes on a little further, but I'm going to stop here. So, first of all, the peace of God is big. It's beyond our current understanding. When we talk about the peace of God, we talk about something we have no access to currently in our current state. We theoretically have access to, right, but not in our experience. Talking about the peace of God is like we're thinking about picking up hiking and to get in shape, and next we consider climbing Mount Everest. So for now, let's set the peace of God aside and begin with more day-to-day items. For example, feeling peaceful, right? Would be one of them. There's still a big difference between experiencing the peace of God and feeling peaceful, and we'll discuss this difference towards the end of this segment. For now, let's begin with the first paragraph of lesson 185. So that first sentence is, I want the peace of God. That's the lesson. And then it says, to say these words is nothing. So we might say we want to feel peaceful, right? We might say we want to be conflict-free. We might say or even pray that we don't want to suffer anymore, right? We might say we want to be with Jesus. We might say we want to learn this course. We might say we want love, be loved, feel loved. We might say we want to feel better. We might say we don't want certain problems any longer, right? Jesus tells us that to say these words is nothing, but to mean these words is everything. The problem is we think we mean these words. We think we want peace. We think we don't want conflict, right? We think we want to be happy. The third line in the first paragraph serves kind of like a self-test where we can see if what we say or think is actually true. It says, if you could but mean them, those words, for just an instant, there would be no further sorrow possible for you in any form. So if we experience any kind of sorrow, in whatever shape it comes to us, like conflict, anger, upset, disappointment, and such, we don't mean it when we say, I want peace. In other words, our current experience shows us what we wanted. If we are at peace right now, that's what we wanted. If we are not, that's what we wanted also. The reason why we don't experience complete peace right now is because we don't want it, and we don't want it because we are afraid of it. One of the biggest defenses of the ego is that we think we want peace, and that something either within us or in the outside world is responsible for us not having it. The notion that we want peace and don't have it is the biggest, or is the ego's most cunning defense. It keeps us in a perpetual haze of powerlessness because we recognize that we don't have peace, and therefore we think there's either something wrong with us or there's something wrong with the world as a reason why we don't have it. There's either some flaw within that we don't know about and that is preventing us from having peace, or the world at large constantly prevents us from having peace. The notion that we want peace, but the world or something within us is preventing us from experiencing it, keeps the ego alive. The ego does not want us to realize that we don't mean it when we say, I want peace. Right? If we were to honestly want peace and not have it, that would mean that we have no power. Especially no power to decide for peace. And if we are powerless, we can never decide against the ego. And that is the ego's goal. Keeping us in a perpetual state of powerlessness when it comes to our state of mind ensures the ego's survival. When we're with the ego, the moment we are with the ego, we want to be powerless. Because when we are with the ego, we believe that we originally used this power of our mind to kill God, which the ego tells us is a sin. Not only is it possible, but it is also a sin. The ego's solution for that is to keep us in this state of powerlessness. Because if we are powerless, we couldn't have possibly killed God. That is the ego's solution for our sin. So saying that we want peace on the one hand, but not experiencing it on the other, means our mind is not powerful enough to have killed God. Minimizing the power of our mind is both the ego's goal for us and our own goal when we are with the ego. To say we want peace, if in fact we don't experience it, therefore, is one of the biggest weapons in the ego's arsenal to keep us in check. And it is our own biggest defense against our belief that we would be annihilated by God if we were to find the peace of God. It's crazy, right? So whenever we say, for example, we don't want a certain conflict anymore, yet we still feel that we're in it, we play into this dynamic. Whenever we experience problems of any kind, while we're saying we don't want those problems anymore, we adhere to this very same principle. Each time we pray not to have money problems, while we still experience them, we buy the whole of the ego thought system, including the belief that we have sinned, that we have used our power to kill God, and that He is now after us. It is crucial. It is crucial to the ego's survival that we do not look at this, and that we rather stay in the state of wanting but not having peace. In other words, saying we want peace and not having it is purposive. Our goal is to deny the power of our mind because we believe it is responsible for the death of God. And the ego's goal is for us never to touch the power of our mind, because if we touch the power of our mind, we could potentially decide against it and the ego would disappear. So our saying we want peace while not having it serves both us and the ego's goals. And that is why it's so crucial to look at this more closely, and lesson 185 does just that. It tells us that saying we want peace is nothing, but meaning it is everything. And before we can mean it, we must realize how much we don't mean it, how everything in our lives is geared toward us not having peace by design. And this is the very foundation of the course's curriculum. So let's talk about the course for a little bit. Notwithstanding the more popular belief that the course is about love, light, and the positive, it is not. The course is not about how much we want peace. The course is about how much we want to avoid peace, how much we don't want it. We can interchange peace with love, happiness, the presence of Jesus within us, heaven, oneness, and God, just to name a few. The course is not about love or any of those things. Just like the introduction to the text says, the course, quote, the course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love. The course's goal is not love or anything positive. The meaning of love will dawn on us once we have first acknowledged and then looked at the fact that we're trying to avoid love by any means necessary. In other words, the course is never about the positive, never. It is never about how much God loves us and how much we love Him, or how much we love our brothers and sisters. Yes, that's part of the curriculum, right? But for it to work, it needs the other side. For the light to be effective, it needs to be applied to and illuminate the darkness. The crux of the whole course, of everything the course is about, 1,200 pages of the course, boil down to one single thing: to get us in touch with how much we don't want to be with God, how much we fear Him, how much we hate Him, and how much we want to avoid Him, together with everybody else. And then to look at this with the light next to us. Once this principle is understood, our understanding of the course changes drastically. Perhaps not right away, but as this gets applied more and more, the meaning of the words in the course will change to lead us ever deeper toward our goal of finding true peace, the true peace of God. This course is about resistance, not forward motion. We are already back home and have been there since the very first moment we seemingly left. There's really nothing to do and nowhere to go for us. We are, as the Course says, at home in God, yet dreaming of exile, but perfectly capable of awakening to reality. And then there is a little question after this sentence in the Course, that is in the chapter 10, section 1. It says, is it your decision to do so? Is it your decision to awaken to reality? Is it our decision to go home? Is it our decision to have peace? The answer is no. Because if we wanted to be home right now, if we wanted to feel the love of Jesus within us, we would. If we wanted to feel the peace of God, we would. If we wanted to have no conflict, no worries, no fear, no guilt, we would. There's no distance, there's no gap, There's no bridge to cross, no journey to undertake, right? We are home, but in full denial of what and who we are and where we are in truth. A good example for this notion that the Course is not a positive, it's not about the positive, is in chapter 4, section 3. Or this is better, actually an example for the fact that a lot of students think this is a course about love or about the positive. And this is one of the reasons why. And it says, the kingdom is perfectly united and perfectly protected, and the ego will not prevail against it. Amen. That is in the text, chapter 4, section 3. So this is a very positive statement, right? Jesus tells us that the ego will not prevail against God. It's an important statement. However, in order for this statement to help us in the long run, we must recognize what Jesus' goal for us is in the Course. Namely, removing the blocks, as the introduction says, removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. On our journey through the ego, we need statements like this. They are like guideposts in a darkened landscape, showing us the way toward our home when it gets too dark around us, right? When it says, the kingdom is perfectly united and perfectly protected. This is a very important sentence. But then Jesus says in the next sentence, this is written in the form of a prayer because it is useful in moments of temptation. So the above line is useful in moments of temptation when we need a quick correction for the ego, right? It definitely helps. However, the actual work with the Course does not lie in it. This is not the actual work with the Course. This sentence and many sentences like that are not designed as this is the work with the Course. Those are guideposts through the darkness, right? When we look at the ego, we need those sentences. The actual work with the Course is to uncover our deep belief that the kingdom is shattered, that oneness has been destroyed by us, and that the ego has prevailed against love. Because either oneness or individuality can exist, and neither both, and not both, the existence of one denies the other, right? If we are alive as an individual, the ego tells us that God and oneness cannot exist, and they must have been destroyed if we are now an individual. It hides this from us, right? Because it doesn't want us to learn what it is that we truly believe. It does not want us to learn that we think we killed God. That is the last thing the ego wants, right? And then if we read a sentence, the kingdom is perfectly united and perfectly protected, and the ego will not prevail against it, this then becomes the Course. When in fact, the real work is to realize how much we think we shattered the kingdom. Right? Those lines, to apply them to our daily lives isn't wrong at all. It's good. It's good to do, but I just always think it's better to apply them, but also realize that that is not the actual work with the Course. The work with the Course is always to uncover the ego's true motives, because that's what the block is between us and the awareness of love. So the denial of our belief that we killed God because that's totally hidden from us. That denial is the ego's defense, right? It's a very big defense of the ego. And the Course is the correction for this denial. And the correction for this denial is to bring what has been denied to the light of truth. And Jesus says, look calmly at the logical conclusion of the ego's thought system and judge whether its offering is really what you want. That is in the text, chapter 10, section 3. He asks us to calmly look at the ego's thought system, at the logical conclusion of the ego's thought system. And the logical conclusion of the ego's thought system is that we have sinned because we have killed God. But it never wants to show us that. It rather wants us to say, I want the peace of God. And then when we don't have it, it tells us either the world is responsible for why you don't have it, or there's something in you, namely sin, that makes you not worthy of having it. Right? Now, let's apply this very same principle to Jesus. We say we want the peace of God. We might think we love Jesus. We might think we want to be with him. This is not the case. We don't want anything to do with him. We hate him and we fear him because he has something we believe is missing in us, namely that he is the Son of God and we are stepchildren at best. The moment we are with the ego, we must hate Jesus because he reminds us of our home in the oneness of heaven, but because we prefer individuality to oneness, we hate everything he stands for. Because we think he took this oneness from us. When we're with the ego, we must hate Jesus. Even if we put him on a pedestal, even if we worship him, we hate him. So as Jesus is a symbol for the peace of God, lesson 185 applies to him as well with only a small change. We would say, I want to be with Jesus. To say these words is nothing, but to mean these words is everything. Our most crucial work with regard to Jesus could be seen in this. Jesus, in order to help us, does not need our, yes, I want to be with you. He does not need our worship. He does not need for us to tell him how much we love him. He knows it's fake. He loves us anyway. What he needs in order to help us is our no, I don't want to have anything to do with you, in all its ugliness. Our no is all he wants from us. In return, he will give us his complete yes, his all-encompassing love. The whole course is, in one sense, aimed at uncovering all the ways we say no to Jesus' presence within us. All the times we deny his love for us. If we wanted to experience his love or his presence within us, we would experience it. As the second paragraph in lesson 185 states, no one can mean these words, I want the peace of God, or I want to experience the presence of Jesus, and not be healed. Our Relationship with Jesus means nothing if we don't bring to him our active denial of his love. Because nobody stops us from experiencing his love within us except us. And all the Course asks us is to bring this denial of his love to him. And here's the reason why this is so important. Our no to him, right? Our saying no to him, for him is actually a yes. But we won't get to that yes unless we look at the no. I know that sounds convoluted. So currently we think we want to be with Jesus, but if we don't experience his love, right now we actually don't want to be with him. We don't want to be with him because we know exactly what awaits us, namely his unimaginable and unmanageable love that will quietly dissolve our individuality. Our no to love stems from our fear of love, and our fear of love confirms love's existence. But we will not know this unless we look at all the ways we say no to him. And he says, for fear is a call for love in unconscious recognition of what has been denied. That is in the text, chapter 12, section 1. So once we look at our no, we can realize that this no was there because we knew what we were denying, namely love. We can't say no to something we don't know. So for Jesus, our no to his love confirms its reality. Each time we recognize that we are not experiencing the love of Jesus within us, we are called to look at this with him. That's the work, and that is the only work. To look at how much we are denying the presence of Jesus or love within us, and look at all the different ways the ego comes up with this denial of love within us. Christianity is solely concerned with the yes to Jesus and yes to God. In fact, it tells us that saying no to Jesus is a sin. And the Course is not at all interested in our yes to God or to Jesus. It is solely concerned with our no. That's what needs to be forgiven. That is the block. This no, this saying we want peace, but we don't mean it, that we want Jesus' love, but not meaning it, that is the whole of the ego thought system right there. This is what the ego is built upon. I want peace, but I can't have it. I don't have it. It must be either I'm bad or the world is taking it from me. It can't be my decision. And the ego can only exist through this denial of our power to decide. And once it's brought to the light, everything in the ego thought system collapses because its foundation was denial. So the ego told us originally that our wish to separate from God is a sin. So we denied that. And we pushed it deep into our unconscious mind, right? But it made its way out again through projection when we gave those thoughts to God. So now we no longer separated from him. We denied this and then we projected it onto God. And now we said, God separated from us. He's the bad guy. The next thing was that sin over separating from God was too much to handle. So we made a world and we hid the guilt within the world. And we denied our own wish to separate. We pushed it in the unconscious. And now, through projection, we see separation all around us. But the only reason why we see the separation all around us, see hatred all around us, see conflict and terror and pain all around us, is because we have denied it within ourselves. And the ego lives by this denial. Without it, it has no power. That is why it does not want us to look at the fact that we're saying no to Jesus or no to peace. It wants us to think we want peace, but that for some reason that is out of our control, we don't have it. Everything in the ego is there to keep this truth hidden from us. What logically follows is that everything in the Course is there to uncover it. So let's talk about the peace of God for a second. For that, I have to tell you a little story. In 1996, I went to the Foundation for A Course in Miracles in Roscoe, New York. They had offered prolonged stays. I think it was up to a year. And I signed up for 3 months. To make a very long story short, while I was there, I did a lot of uncovering. You literally have nothing to do there, other than hiking or walking around the lake. So I read in the Course like 5-6 hours a day. And I also wrote in a journal letters to Jesus about how I felt and what I thought and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff came up. It was a very intense time, to say the least, right? However, on a few occasions, I had what one could call now, I guess, revelatory experiences. And most of them involved Jesus. The strongest one happened when I talked with my now ex-wife, Laura, whom I had met there when I was at the Foundation. And we were in her apartment and we talked about the Course, I think. And then from one moment to the next, I experienced the most intense love I had ever felt. It was beyond anything I could possibly describe, beyond anything in this world. But while I was experiencing it, I tried to tell Laura about it in like an account while it happened. And I remember saying while sobbing that if we were to trust our lives to Jesus, we would never have to worry about anything ever again. Ever, 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 ever. The experience lasted about 30 seconds, plus minus. During those 30 seconds, I realized that his love was so vast. I think vast is the best description of it. It was so all-encompassing that my body was completely non-existent at that moment. My personality was non-existent. But there was no void either. Nothing was missing. There was simply nothing other than his love. And it was so big and vast that I could not handle it. I literally could not handle it. This is still to this day one of the most powerful experiences with regard to him and his presence. The one conscious item I took from this experience was this hint of what the peace of God actually is. I think it was just a hint, because I think this is still much, much bigger. Even though this felt completely all-encompassing, and again, vast is the best description. This vast love that is completely unmanageable with this tiny little conscious mind of ours. So I think we in our current state literally cannot manage it. That's why we have to say no to it. I think we can only learn to prepare for it through forgiveness, right? Looking at all the ways we say no to each other, to love, to Jesus, to peace and joy, that is the way towards that. We're unable to manage his love because in order to survive, we had to make ourselves very, very small. We thought if we would be small, God would not find us. That's why we made us tiny, very, very tiny, like a speck of dust. That's how small we made ourselves. So we wouldn't be found by God. And Jesus talks about this smallness in the Course. So, in order for us to ready ourselves to accept this vastness of love, we must increase the size of the vessel that carries it. And we can only increase the size of the vessel when we learn that our smallness comes from our belief in sin and our subsequent fear of God. To look at our ego with all its shapes and forms, with Jesus next to us, that's the way where we slowly allow ourselves to get bigger, to rise from our smallness to our true self in God. So one of the reasons for this segment is to realize that it's not just, not only do we, so we think we want the peace of God. Underneath that is that we don't want the peace of God, right? We don't want anything to do with that. So we have to first, I think, learn throughout our day that if we say we want peace, or if we say we don't want conflict anymore, or we want better relationships or anything like that, we first have to realize that if we wanted all those things, we would have it. Right? So if we wanted, bottom line, if we want the peace of God, we would have it. We don't have it, ergo, we don't want it. That is the first part, right? We have to tackle that. To look at that. The second part is that we realize why we don't want it. Why do we not choose peace? Why? Right? The ego's answer is because we're bad. We're sinful. God will punish us. We cannot manage it. We are too small. The moment we're together with the ego, we are, we are this, right? We're the cap of this pen. And the ocean is love, so we can't manage it. If this meets the ocean, this will be swept away. It will be gone, right? This is too small for the ocean. The peace of God, as the Bible says, passeth our understanding. It is too vast for us. So our solution for our sin was to make us tiny so that God could not find us. But at the very same time, we made ourselves so small that the love that awaits us, we can't manage. It's too vast. So what we need to do, and that is what the Course aims at, is to decrease our fear of God. Because the only reason we made ourselves small is we believe God will kill us when we get back home, right? That's why we keep ourselves tiny. So over time, we look at the ego, we look at all of our no's, no to God, no to our brothers, no to our sisters, right? No to love in all its forms. And we do not judge. We ask Jesus for help to look at this with us. And slowly over time, our vessel will grow. And we will be able to accept love more and more until at some point when we're ready, we will realize we don't need the vessel because we are love. We are the ocean. But we can't think like that right now because everything within us says, no, I'm not the ocean. I'm this tiny little vessel. I'm not even a vessel. I'm a closed up little dust ball. I am dust and I will return to dust. Even if it's stardust, it doesn't matter. It's still dust. As a closing, I want to read paragraph 8 from the same lesson 185. I want the peace of God. Today, devote your practice periods to careful searching of your mind to find the dreams you cherish still. What do you ask for in your heart? Forget the words you use in making your requests. Consider but what you believe will comfort you and bring you happiness. But be you not dismayed by lingering illusions, for their form is not what matters now. Let not some dreams be more acceptable, reserving shame and secrecy for others. They are one. And being one question should be asked of all of them: is this what I would have in place of heaven and the peace of God? Thanks for watching.